imagine receiving a cancer diagnosis at the age of 26? That would be so scary. I mean, at any point in life, it's scary, but at 26, it's like life is just beginning. Well, that's exactly what happened to Chris Wark, who is our guest today on the Alter Your Health podcast, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Alter, and thank you so very much for taking the time out of your busy day and spend this hour or so with me and Chris. I am confident that today's conversation is going to do exactly what is my mission, to inspire and to inform people on how to live a healthy life holistically. And we're not just talking about diet and lifestyle and exercise and things like that. We're talking about cleaning up the life, cleaning out our toxic thoughts, cleansing the body on all levels, transforming life like full on. And that's what Chris did in his life after he received a cancer diagnosis. He beat cancer. Chris beat cancer, but he didn't do so with aggressive conventional treatments that knock down the immune system and knock down cancer cells and beat cancer that way. He beat cancer lovingly, naturally, by promoting the innate immunity of the body through nutrition and powerful natural therapies. And he did so thriving, and he is a living example of how to thrive through cancer. And he has been showing people how to do it through his blog, chrisbeatcancer.com, and his more recent book, which is also entitled Chris Beat Cancer. I encourage you to pick up a copy, even if you're not struggling with cancer, or even if you don't, but chances are you do know someone who has received a cancer diagnosis. But even if you haven't, this is an incredible resource to help you prevent any such chronic disease and thrive in this life. So I want to get right into this conversation, but first I want to encourage you to subscribe, rate, review this podcast, leave a comment, leave some feedback, let me know how I'm doing. Any words of encouragement or criticism help me stay on track and grow and evolve in this journey that I'm in. So thank you for being a part of it. But this isn't about me. This is about our guest today, Chris Wark. So I want to get right into it. Why don't we take a breath, sit back, relax, and enjoy these wise words with our guest, Chris Wark. All right, Chris Wark, thank you so much for joining us on the Alter Your Health podcast.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Yeah, I'm so inspired, as are so many, by your story of healing naturally. And I think, it's just one of those stories that more and more people need to hear, just to kind of, continue that wave of inspiration in the world. So would you like to just start by sharing your version of the story as you've shared with so many?
Yeah, happy to tell it. So I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer when I was 26, and I am now 41. So obviously I didn't die. But at that time, it was, completely life-shattering diagnosis and very scary. And I was rushed into treatment, rushed into surgery. I was told, we got to get this thing out of you before it spreads and kills you. The reason I found out I had colon cancer was because I was having abdominal pain. And it just kind of progressively got worse throughout the year. And then eventually I got a colonoscopy. And that's when they found the tumor, took a biopsy, and confirmed I had colon cancer. So this was a couple days before Christmas when I was diagnosed. So it was just a huge bummer. And they were actually, they wanted to get me into surgery like the next day. And which is crazy. This is what happens to cancer patients. They get a diagnosis and they're rushed into treatment before they have any idea what's happening to them. They don't understand their disease. They don't understand the treatments. Like, they don't know anything. And some of them are started on chemo within a couple days. Some of them start radiation right away. Some of them it's right into surgery. So, it really is unfortunate that so much fear is used to manipulate patients into immediate action. And the reality is there are a lot of risks. There are a lot of side effects. And some of these risks are life-threatening, right? People die in surgery. They die on the operating table. They can die from chemotoxicity, right? So one of my big passions and mission is not to tell people not to do treatment, but it's to help educate them so they understand like what they're getting into. They know the risks, they know the benefits, they know the likelihood that this treatment will actually help them. I created a free guide for cancer patients called 20 Questions for Your Oncologist. It's a free download on my site. People can go get it and go through it, like learn, understand like what you're getting into. So, and the questions you need to ask before you say yes to treatment. This is critical. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's, just talking about the industry in general, that's one of the big problems with the cancer treatment industry. And I was right in the middle of it, had surgery. They took out the tumor. They took out a bunch of lymph nodes because they saw it had spread and it was worse than they thought, which is what they told me when I woke up. So now I went from being probably stage 2, which is what they thought, to stage 3C. And now the conversation is, well, things have changed. You're going to need 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy because you have, it's likely that you have microscopic cancer cells circulating throughout your body. Now, what we know now is you have microscopic cancer cells, which all cancer cells are microscopic. That's kind of
right.
a redundant statement. But you have cancer cells, circulating tumor cells, and circulating stem cells circulating throughout your whole body, even before a tumor is large enough to find on a scan. Those circulating stem cells leave the primary tumor site almost immediately. Now, the good news is your immune system is killing them, right? That's your immune system's job. One of its jobs is to identify and eliminate cancer cells before they start multiplying and spreading. So anyway, I had, there's no question that I had circulating cancer stem cells and tumor cells in my body after surgery. And they recommended chemotherapy for me. And I thought, okay, well, this is my life now. I'm a cancer patient. Mm-hmm. A couple things happened in the hospital that, sort of are comical now and were strange at the time, but they got me thinking a little bit differently. The first thing that happened was the very first meal that they served me after taking out a third of my large intestine was a sloppy Joe.
That's just crazy. I mean,
which I know that's your favorite. Your favorite.
Lucky
food.
Guy. Oh man, how'd they guess your favorite food? Yeah.
Yeah. Every year on my birthday, oh please, Mom, will you make me a sloppy Joe?
Yeah, extra sloppy. Extra sloppy.
Yeah. And so I think most people know what sloppy Joes are, and most people watching or listening to this probably haven't had a sloppy Joe in a long time, because typically you only get them at maybe in the high school lunch line, or if you're in the military maybe, or if you do some time in prison.
It's like the perfect nutritional storm for the body.
Yeah. It's just
absurd.
Just horrible. So and to compound the absurdity, and red meat is a known contributor of colon cancer, right? So it's like, let's give the colon cancer patients some more red meat right after surgery. So I didn't know any of this at the time, but I did know that I was on heavy pain medication in a hospital bed, staring at a sloppy Joe going, what? Like, why?
Do these guys know what they're doing? Yeah, it really does make you question, do these guys know what they're doing, and to what extent?
They know what they're doing. They don't care, right?
Yeah.
They don't care. Like, serving nutritious meals to sick people is not high on the priority list. And the definition of nutritious for the hospital is like meat on a plate, maybe with some vegetables, or some applesauce. Like, it just doesn't even matter, right? Is there a protein and a carb on the plate? So anyway, I thought it was weird, right? I'm like, why are they serving this to sick people? This doesn't make any sense.
So even in that stage, drugged up, you were thinking like, sure, like I get it, it's food, but this shouldn't be what I'm fueling my body, especially at this point in my healing.
Exactly.
That was a thought you had in your mind.
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah.
Why are they serving this to sick people? Gross. So I did eat it though. I was hungry. Now, the other thing that happened in the hospital was the day I was told I could go home, the surgeon came in, we had a conversation about, what was going to happen next, what I should expect or whatever. And it's one point in the conversation, I said, hey, are there any foods I need to avoid? Because I'm thinking, like they just cut my guts open, took a section out, sewed them back together, right?
Right.
And I don't want to eat the wrong thing. Again, is there anything that I shouldn't eat that would screw this up? Like, is hot sauce off limits or Doritos too pointy? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I mean, you would think like healing soups or broths or juices.
Something.
That's what they recommended, I'm sure, right?
This guy was supposedly one of the best abdominal surgeons in Memphis. Yeah. And I just thought he'd be like, oh yeah, you probably shouldn't eat this and it'd be good to eat that. No, all he said was, no, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah.
So again, I'm like, really? Like nobody in the medical community cares about nutrition at all? And by the way, I did have a background in healthy living. My mom was kind of a health foodie growing up in the 80s and 90s. Not as hardcore as today's crunchy moms, but she was into it. And I worked at Wild Oats for a year in college, which got bought out by Whole Foods, but it was a grocery store with lots of organic food and natural living products and all that kind of stuff. And so like I knew like what healthy food was, but I wasn't eating it. So I go home, I'm recovering from surgery, and I'm thinking about my life and my future and like what's going to become of me, right? I mean, how long am I going to live? Am I going to be the story, Chris, the guy who got cancer and died in his 20s? Like, is that my story? Is that my fate or whatever? And it was pretty scary, right? It's just scary to think about. And I was thinking about chemotherapy, which, I was supposed to start as soon as I recovered from surgery. And I just thought, the idea of poisoning my way back to health didn't make sense. And I didn't know what else to do, but I just had this internal resistance to chemotherapy. Again, I don't tell people not to do chemotherapy. It's a personal choice, right? I think we all need to listen to our instincts and our intuition. And not be rushed into something we don't understand, or that something inside us is saying like, this is not for you, don't do it, right? And I was having those feelings and and thoughts and whatever. So I prayed about it. My wife and I just prayed one day about my situation, and I've been praying a lot, anyway, but specifically I said, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, please show me. Right? I don't know what to do. I'm lost. This doesn't feel right. I don't feel good about it. I don't have peace about it. And a couple days later, I got a book that was sent to me from a man in Alaska who was friends with my dad. And I'm in Tennessee. So he sends me this book. I start reading it. And the guy who wrote it had, according to him, healed his own colon cancer with nutrition. And specifically a raw food diet.
What was that book?
That book's God's Way to Ultimate Health.
God's Way to Ultimate Health.
Yeah, right. By George Malcolmus. So that book was kind of a little mini miracle for me, because I realized, wait a second, hang on. If this guy healed and he didn't have surgery or chemo or radiation, like, if this guy healed it, then maybe I can heal it, right? Cancer is created by the body, and the body can heal it. And so that book, there's some information in the book I don't agree with now, having read and researched for 15 years, but the basic premise of it was solid, right? You got to get away from processed food, junk food, man-made food, animal food, and start eating fruits and vegetables and juicing. And I'm like, I'm all in. Like, this sounds really good. Yeah. And at that time, I'd never even heard of a raw food diet. It was 2004. Like, there was no social media. Raw foodism was like super fringe and weird.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'd never even heard that that was the thing. I didn't realize that people did that. And even working at Whole Foods, Wild Oats, I didn't know that there were such thing as raw foodists.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I converted overnight. I was like, okay, all organic, all raw, going to the grocery store, buying as much vegetables as I can, started making giant salads, just giant bowls full of vegetables, and bought a juicer, started juicing, started out with just drinking about 64 ounces of carrot juice every day. And then I started adding more to it, like beets and celery and ginger root, and amping it up. And was just feeling really good. But my family thought I'd lost my mind. And there was a lot of pressure.
They were pressuring you to the conventional, what the
Yeah,
doctors were saying in terms of treatment, medications, and chemo.
chemo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of my family wanted me to do chemo because they loved me. They were scared. They thought it was the best option for survival for me. And when I told them like I didn't really want to do it, or at least not right away, they didn't like that. Right? They thought I was making a huge mistake. They were telling me I was making a mistake. I was being stubborn, and that made things really difficult because I kind of lost my support system. Right? I thought I had. If you do chemo and you go the conventional route, everybody's cheering you on, and they're making T-shirts and they're making cupcakes for you, and they're running a race for you, and like, oh, this is for Sally's breast cancer warrior club. Look at our T-shirts, woo! Like, but if you don't do that, then everybody's like, okay.
What? Yeah. Is this guy? Did this guy like not get the memo? Is he really on his death sentence? Yeah.
Right. Everybody's just
Death march.
slowly backing away from you.
Yeah.
And I realized, if I was going to see this through, I was going to have to do it alone. That was really tough. So
did the family kind of gradually catch on to what you were doing, or was there a lot of resistance for a long time?
there was a ton of resistance in the beginning, and people came around over time.
Yeah.
Right. Which is pretty normal.
Yeah.
But in the beginning is the toughest part. That's when there's the most pressure, the most intense, pressure to go do what the doctor says and don't question it. And so I was fortunate. I had my mom was, I told you, she was into natural health and healing. And when I told her what I wanted to do, she was like, oh, she totally understood it, knew about it, supported it. And turns out had a huge library of books from the 70s and 80s and 90s, all about nutritional healing, alternative cancer therapies. She had all these books that she had read and collected over the years just because she thought it was interesting.
Wow. She was saving them up for you.
Saving them up for me. It was another little miracle, right? And so I was like, wow, this is I can't believe you have, because I was like, have you ever heard of this guy? Or have you ever heard of Paul Bragg? Oh yeah, I've got all these books. So she had the original Al Carter book about rebounding. She had the Paul Bragg books. She had Pablo Areola, raw food books. I'm looking at all these books she had. SCACT, just crazy. I've got most of her library now at my house.
Super cool. Yeah.
So so that was cool. I knew this is no coincidence. This is not a coincidence that my mom has saved up all these books about nutrition and natural health and healing, right? She saved them up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gave me a little more faith that I was on the right path. But I had all this pressure to go see the oncologist and do chemo. So I agreed to go just to appease everyone. And this is what most cancer patients do. They get so much pressure from their friends and family. They're just like, okay, I'll go, whatever. They just want people to just leave them alone. So they just agree to whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And little do they know they're walking into the lion's den, because cancer clinics, man, it's a fear factory in there. And they have got it down to a science. If you walk in there, it's pretty likely you're going to walk out booked for the next appointment for chemo or whatever, right? Totally. They know how to keep you as a customer.
Yeah. Can I pause you for a second and talk a little bit about fear? I'm so with you that, the diagnosis itself is inherently fearful. It's in many cases a death sentence. And I certainly agree that, the system can capitalize on that and take advantage of where people are emotionally and uncertain and, they're wearing the white coats and everything. And I'm curious how you were when you received your diagnosis. Were you in the same state of fear that you imagine all of others who are diagnosed with cancer are in? And how did you separate yourself from that fear so that you were a little bit more grounded, it sounds like, in your decision making?
Yeah, I had just as much fear as any other cancer patient.
Yeah, I would
Uh,
imagine.
yeah, without a doubt, and even more in some ways because when I decided to walk away from conventional treatment, right, the fear of failure and dying a fool, right? So there was a little bit of that kind of fear too, of just
Mm.
being, having a fool's legacy, basically. But there's an expression that I love so much, and Joyce Meyer's the first person I heard say it. I don't know if she actually coined it, but it's, if you're scared, do it scared. And for me, that's what I did. Like, yeah, it was. I was afraid. Like, the fear was real. It was every day. I was dealing with fear every day, and yet I just made the decision to press on and do what I knew had to be done.
Well,
A lot of
it
people,
sounded like you were receiving some external input that was signaling that you were on a right path, despite it still being scary, with the books and the
oh, without a doubt,
support coming
I
in.
mean,
Yeah,
as a
that
believer,
helps.
yeah, as a believer, as a Christian, like, I put my faith in God, and I was like, lead me, like, help, like, and so
Mm-hmm.
constantly I was getting answers to my prayers, signs, signals. It's kind of like, I use this analogy a lot, but when you're healing cancer, it's like you're basically going into the jungle, right, alone, and you got to hack your way through. And so, and it's dark, right? It's not like the conventional path that's paved and brightly lit, and there's all these people telling you where to go and what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm hacking my way through the jungle, so to speak, and desperately needing some reassurance, along the way. And if you've ever been hiking, right, there's always like moments on a hike where you're like, are we lost? You know what I mean? Because you
Yeah.
haven't seen a sign in a while, and you're like, and then, but you're like, okay, well, we'll just keep going. And then eventually you see a little marker or a sign. You're like, okay, good. No, this is the way. We're good, everybody. Right. And
Yeah, great
that's,
metaphor. Yeah.
yeah, that's how it was for me. I would just get these little like reminders along the way, not every day, they would just kind of come right when I needed them the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, that brings me to the cancer clinic story. So I'm a week after I converted to a raw food diet, I'm sitting in this cancer clinic. We're in the waiting room waiting to go back and see the oncologist for my first visit, consultation, not treatment, and the TV's on, and out comes Jack LaLanne on one of the morning shows. And Jack LaLanne is, at that time he was like 78 years old, fit as a fiddle. He's one of the, for any younger folks that don't know, like, he was one of the pioneers of health and wellness and fitness back in the 1950s. Like, had a black and white TV show all about health and fitness.
Yeah, I hate to
And
claim my ignorance, but I'll have to look him up myself.
oh yeah, no, you got to look up Jack LaLanne. He's amazing. So
Cool.
he's a legend. But he comes out and he starts going off about nutrition and health, and he says the reason we're all so sick is because we are eating processed food, man-made food, junk food, whatever. If man made it, don't eat it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe this is on the TV right now.
How
With me sitting in
perfect.
the cancer clinic,
Yeah.
like, it's like just reminding me, right? It's reminding me, and it was like kind of preparing me, because what was about to happen was very difficult. So we go back, we see the oncologist, and he just, these guys see dozens of patients every day, and so, like, he comes in there, like, flips through my chart. Okay, yeah, you got stage 3 colon cancer. You're going to need chemotherapy, 5-FU and leucovorin. You've got about a 60% chance of living 5 years with treatment. And I'm like, that doesn't sound very encouraging, right? 60% chance of
60%
living 5 years
with the treatment. Yeah.
with treatment. And so I'm like, okay, well, at some point in the conversation, either my wife or I asked him, what about the raw food diet? And he said, no, you can't do that. It'll fight the chemo. And I'm like,
What does that even mean? Yeah.
yeah, what does that mean? Well, I was too uncomfortable to ask him what it meant.
Yeah.
You know, I just kind of let it float. I can tell you what it means now. There is a long-standing idea that cancer patients shouldn't eat anything raw because they're afraid, because the chemotherapy destroys their immune system, so they're afraid that some otherwise harmless bacteria on an apple is going to create a big problem in their body because their immune system's been decimated. So also, raw food diet is a very aggressive detoxification diet. So, I mean, your body tends to kick the chemo out faster. Like, it doesn't work as well on a raw food diet because your body becomes very in tune. Yeah, right? Very sensitive, very in tune with like what is good and what is not good for it. So anyway, he said that, and that was a little weird. And then I said, well, are there any alternative therapies available? And at that point, his demeanor completely flipped, and he just became arrogant and condescending. And he was like, no, if you don't do chemotherapy, you're insane.
What a bedside manner.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he proceeded to continue to like try to talk me into it. Like, he pulled out all the little tools in his toolbox, like psychologically. It was like, and I just kind of went into like deer in the headlights mode. Like, I wasn't even hearing what he was saying. He was just talking down to me, you know, basically telling me if I didn't do what he said, I was going to die. And at one point though, he, in the middle of like just this muddled, you know, diatribe, he says, look, man, I'm not saying this because I need your business. And it's like, wait, what? Like, I wasn't even talking about that. Like, you know, it wasn't even.
Forgot that you walked into the sales shop. Yeah. The business shop.
Completely out of left field. Like, it's not like I was like, oh, you're all about the money. Like, no, I wasn't thinking about money or business or anything. Yeah. And so he says that, and I'm like, what? Like, oh, okay. And even despite the weird things he said and all that, he still basically hypnotized me. And we finished the appointment, and I walked straight to the desk out of fear and made an appointment to start chemotherapy in a few weeks. I mean, that's how strong fear is. It's the most powerful motivator there is.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're afraid, your stress hormones start pumping, and they interfere with your brain function, and you can't think logically or rationally, right? Everything just becomes instinct, survival instinct, and it's all illogical and irrational and impulsive. And so we walked to the car, man, and sat in my wife's car and just held hands and prayed and cried, and I just choked out a prayer, basically. I mean, it was such a low point. Right. I mean, I walked in there confident, feeling good in what I was doing. And I walked out of there, my faith and hope was just shattered. And it was just tough, man. And that's, again, that's when I realized, like, man, if I don't do this, I'm going to be doing it alone. Because at that time, my wife too, and by the way, that meeting was helpful in so many ways. It's very telling. And that's why I created that free guide, 20 Questions for Your Oncologist, because if you ask the right questions, I accidentally asked, right, a few questions that like totally flipped the conversation, right?
Yeah, without getting too far off topic, and I don't want you to give away all 20, but what were some of the questions that kind of kept things focused?
So, well, you heard the questions that I asked, right? Because I just talked about those. But like some others would be, how about a very direct question like this? Will this treatment cure my cancer? Is my cancer curable? What is the 10-year survival for patients who are my age and sex and have my exact diagnosis who did this treatment? But those are just a few.
Yeah, great.
There's a bunch, right?
Yeah.
But when you ask very direct, pointed questions, you will get some very weird answers. Right? What oncologists often do is they just kind of bumble around because you catch them off guard, right? Because no one ever asks them straight point blank, like, is this going to cure my cancer or not?
Yeah, they've got their sales pitch and anything that throws them off of it. And we're kind of being harsh, but we've kind of stated
it's a matter of life and death, man.
The fact, yeah.
Yeah, it's a matter of life and death for many patients. And like, do not be timid. Right?
Yeah.
Ask the uncomfortable, tough questions. right? Because you're putting your life in this person's hands. And this
Mm-hmm.
is also a person who probably won't remember your name if you bumped into them at the grocery store. So,
Good point.
because they see so many patients.
Right, right.
Okay. So anyway, so so that's the purpose of that guide is, as I realized, I didn't have a good plan, I didn't have a strategy, I just accidentally asked a few questions that flipped the conversation and made us start thinking differently, and also made my wife start thinking differently, because she was very conventionally minded
Mm-hmm.
and couldn't imagine me not doing chemotherapy, thought it was totally crazy. And then she saw the way this guy treated us, and she heard what he said too, and she was
Mm-hmm.
like, wait a second, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes it just takes, we all have, uh, high impressions of doctors, um, and most of them are very good, hardworking people who do care, but they're trapped in a system that's terrible. The system is so terrible that doctors have the highest rates of suicide of any profession. That's how terrible the system is, right?
Yeah.
It's
Things
crazy.
are
Med
whack.
students and residents and just full-fledged doctors, MDs, highest
Mm-hmm.
rates of suicide. So anyways, I just want to be very clear. I love doctors. I have friends who are MDs. Like, it's not them. They're not the problem. They've just been ground up into a terrible system that is basically, they have limited tools. They're not trained in nutrition. They're not trained in prevention. They're just trained in drugs and surgical procedures and radiation, right? And that's all you got. Those are your options.
Totally.
Like,
Totally.
one of the biggest tragedies in the cancer community, and really in the medical community as a whole, is that, but we'll just talk about cancer but it plays out across the board, is that so many cancer patients ask their doctor, like, why do you think I got cancer? And more often than not, they say, well, it's probably genetic. Do you have a family history? It's probably genetic, hereditary. Well, I mean, but it wasn't anything you did, right? It's nothing you did. And when you tell a patient it's nothing they did, that it's just bad luck or bad genes, what you do to that person is you make them into a powerless victim.
Right.
And doctors are uncomfortable telling patients the truth. That's a problem, because the number one cause of cancer is smoking. It's the number one cause, not just lung cancer, many cancers. Guess whose fault that is? It's your fault.
It's
You've been
not your
smoking
genetics.
cigarettes
Right.
your whole life, right?
Yeah, totally.
Now, even if you didn't know better, I get it. Like, for generations, I mean, or not generations, but like for decades, there were commercials like, my doctor smokes Camel, right?
Yeah.
So even it's not like I'm blaming you, you're a horrible person, but look, your habit did cause your cancer. Okay, so like for the smoker, but doctors won't even tell their patients, like, well, it's from smoking, right? It's more than likely smoking. The second biggest cause of cancer is obesity. It's the second leading cause, obesity. How does one get obese? Well, vast majority of cases, it's from your diet and lack of exercise. So being sedentary plus eating a diet that's very high in calories, empty calories, animal foods, processed foods, right, leads to weight gain and obesity. Again, these are our choices. So your choices matter. Your choices can determine health or disease. And doctors aren't telling their patients this, right? And the
Totally.
big epiphany for me was like, the way I'm living is killing me. The way I'm living is killing me, right? I didn't beat myself up. I didn't feel sorry for myself. Like, it wasn't about that. It was like, whoa, this is a light bulb here. Because if the way I'm living is killing me up to this point, what would happen if I changed the way I live? What would happen if I started eating a diet that's only raw fruits and vegetables, like the most pure diet available to mankind, right? Organic, straight from the earth, unadulterated. What would happen? What would happen if I started exercising? What would happen if I detox my home and throw out all the chemical crap, body care products, cleaning products, whatever, deodorant, all this stuff? And I got really excited about just radically changing my life.
Well, could you tell us a little bit about the pre-diagnosis, Chris? Like, what was the diet and lifestyle like?
Typical American diet. Absolutely. Before cancer, I was like every other young American guy, eating tons of meat and dairy, eating lots of fast food, processed food, and junk food. When you're in your 20s, you feel like you're invincible anyway. So I was living on fast food and junk food for sure. And I had for many years, like since teenage years, right? So for a solid decade or more, right? And even though my mom was a health nut, we still ate meat all the time, and eggs and dairy. Like, so she wasn't like I said, she wasn't as hardcore as moms are today, but like she would buy whole grain bread instead of white bread. She'd buy, whole peanut butter you had to stir up instead of like smooth, sugary Jif peanut butter or Peter Pan.
Right.
So she was like making healthy choices like that. We'd have kefir in the fridge and alfalfa sprouts, but still eating way too much meat and animal foods. And look, my first birthday was at a McDonald's. There you go, right? My generation was really the first generation that you could call the fast food generation. I was born in 1977, right? So fast food really exploded in the 80s when I was coming up. And so 80s, 90s, today, right? But before that, like kids born in the 70s, they didn't eat much fast food. It really exploded in the 80s. So anyway, where am I going with this? So breakfast was typically for me, like if I even ate breakfast, it was like cereal, like some kind of cereal, or Jimmy Dean microwave sausage biscuits, maybe.
So you got super excited about the potential of what life could be like if you were to switch things 180 degrees.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, lunch was always fast food: McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, KFC, Taco Bell, whatever. And dinner was maybe more fast food, or my wife and I might have made something, like she might have made like a little chicken breast with some, mashed potatoes or something, right? But anyway, so I went from that to hardcore, all raw, juicing every day. And when the day came to go start chemotherapy, to get the port put in, right? The next step before chemo, I didn't go, right? I was just like, I can't do this. Not now. I can't do this right now. To me, in my mind, it was sort of, I moved it to the last resort category because I wanted to change my life. I wanted to empower my body. I wanted to rebuild it. I wanted to repair it. I wanted to overdose on nutrition. That's what I was thinking about. That's what I was excited about. And I wasn't excited about, poison in my veins, sickness, losing more weight, losing my hair. Like, I was like, no, I don't want to die that. I don't want to do that. If I'm going to live, I'm going to live on my terms. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die on my terms. And so
that really clicked for you. So you didn't get the port put in, and it was just really solidified in yourself. I'm doing it. That's kind of like, that was almost kind of like my burn the boats moment. Yeah. Right. So it's like, and I think was it Cortez that did that? Do you know the story? I know what you're referencing, but
I think it's Cortez, but Spanish conquistador, explorer, whatever. But when they landed in the Americas, and for everybody watching and listening, I'm paraphrasing because anyway, when they landed in the Americas, he had his army and they were there to conquer. And the first thing he did after they landed was he burned his boats. So they knew there was no going back.
We're here. Yeah.
We're here. There's no going back. It's either we conquer this land and live, or we, retreat and die. So anyway, it was kind of like that. And it was also freeing because then it was like, everybody's like, okay, Chris has lost his mind, whatever. And that gave me freedom to just really pursue health, transform every aspect of my life, and just progressively just keep making all these little changes that added up to a huge change, right?
Totally.
Some people get intimidated by life change, but the thing is, like, it's just one step at a time, right? Totally. You're just changing small things. You can't change everything in one day. Yeah. Although I pretty much changed my diet in one day, but you can't change everything in one day. And so you just change what you can as you can. And
Yeah,
then,
what really strikes me is so many people kind of teeter totter, one foot in, one foot out, a little bit of chemo, a juice here and there, and obviously that's just one example of how we teeter totter. But what really strikes me is how it was so clear, and you were so committed, and there was no questioning it. And it seems like that's an important ingredient in the healing process. How
yeah,
do you feel? What do you think about that
I,
aspect?
I totally agree with you. And I want to make sure that everybody understands, like, I didn't have full clarity, like, and I didn't have full confidence. I was still scared. I was
Mhm.
scared hacking through the jungle alone as much as I was scared to go do chemo. Right? Both options were scary. It's like,
Mhm.
I got no, either option is scary. And so, um, and fear and doubt were always trying to creep in. And every time those anxieties and worries and fears would creep in, like, what if this doesn't work? What if you're getting worse? Like, what are you going to do? I would just stop and just catch myself in the fear, and I'd give it to God. And I'd just say, God, I trust you. I'm just laying this at the feet of Jesus. Like, I'm laying it down, and I'm not going to carry this anymore, in this fear. Like, I trust you, and I'm not going to be afraid. Right. And you brought up fear early in our conversation, and it's such a huge thing because, you know, people have said this to me lots of times. They say, like, oh, so courageous of you to do what you did, or so brave of you. And the funny thing is, like, no, like, you don't understand, like, courage is fear. Like, nobody ever
Right.
feels courageous. Nobody ever feels brave. All you feel is fear. Like, the
Right.
difference is, by definition, courage or bravery is moving forward in spite of fear.
Right. I've
Right?
been told that, if you want to be courageous, then you ask for opportunities to act courageously. And you can only ever do that facing things that are really scary.
Yeah. If you're scared, do it scared. That's courage.
Yeah.
Right? If you're on a
Yeah.
battlefield and you run away, right? That
Hmm.
is, that's fear, right? That's
Hmm.
cowardice. If you move forward, that's courage. And
Hmm.
so, man, to me, yeah, I never felt courageous or brave. I just felt fear, but I was determined to live. And that's the most important sort of overarching, uh, concept, right? Force
Hmm.
in my life was, I wanted to live. Like, I was wanted to live. I was determined to live. I wanted to get well. I was willing to change my whole life. And I was willing to give up all my bad habits, all my favorite foods, anything and everything to get well. And you said a second ago, some people do a little chemo, a little juice, and whatever. That rarely helps. Okay, it rarely helps when you kind of do something half-heartedly. There's one thing I know for sure, is that massive action produces massive results, and minimal action produces minimal results. Right? And so, like, minimal action, like, what do you expect? What do you think is going to happen? We all want a quick fix. We all want to take the pill and fix the problem, right? Because we've been conditioned that way by the pharmaceutical industry, right? The biggest pill sellers of all. Let me fix your problem with the pill. But
Totally.
rarely does one change or one pill, right, fix anything or produce results that are going to change your life. I mean, we've all
Yeah.
seen those stories, rags to riches. Somebody makes one YouTube video and they have 1,000,000,000,000,000 views, right, or something. But I mean, the reality for most successful people in any line of work, any business, any pursuit, is that they persevered, right? Day in, day out, focused on one goal, and they just wouldn't let up and they wouldn't quit. And so for me, that was it. It was like, I just had, I like to say, I, like, pointed my ship toward Healthy Island, right? And just, like, anytime I got a little off course, I would just,
Yeah.
I just point it back. Just keep pointing your ship toward Healthy Island, and
Yeah.
don't give up until you get there.
Yeah.
So I got there.
You're there. You're living on Healthy Island.
I did get there after a
Yeah.
lot of perseverance, and I was able to build a team too. I found a naturopath who supported me. I found an integrative oncologist who supported me and did IV vitamin C, which is very powerful therapy, anti-cancer therapy. I took tons of supplements. Like, I talk about this stuff in my book, and I have a course as well called Square One. It goes a little bit more deep, in terms of practical step-by-step, like life-changing action for cancer patients and people who are serious about prevention. But anyway, so after the 5-year mark, around that time, I had another scan, and it was like, no cancer. Like, and my doctor was surprised. Everybody was surprised, because they all kind of thought, like, oh, it's coming back. You're a young adult. It's very aggressive in young adults. You didn't do chemo. Like, you got to do chemo to kill those remaining cancer cells. But in my mind, what I was doing was I was creating an environment where cancer could not thrive.
100%.
Your immune system can kill cancer cells. Immunotherapies are the biggest research, like, boom right now, because they know if we can figure out how to harness the immune system, it'll eliminate the cancer, right? And so,
100%.
yeah, and they're trying to do it with drugs, because that's where the money is, right? Every drug costs billions of dollars to get approved, and they're hoping that they'll make many, many more billions of dollars. There's no money in nutrition or prevention or exercise or juice or green tea or blueberries or garlic or onions or ginger, all the most potent anti-cancer foods, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, mushrooms. There's no money in that, right? None. So other than just like grocery store money, when you want to open a grocery store, like, you're not going to make billions of dollars. That's for sure.
But it's so empowering to know that you can full on heal yourself.
You can. And there's so many better stories than mine too. Right? People accuse me, like, well, you had surgery cured your cancer. Well, my doctors didn't think so. Right. And statistically speaking, no, it's very unlikely that surgery cured my cancer. But I've interviewed lots of people on my website who have healed all types and stages of cancer, some of them with no treatment, others after treatment failed. And those stories get me so excited, right? Like, better stories than mine. And yes, we have evidence, we have proof, numerous, thousands and thousands of people have healed cancer with nutrition, radical life change. It's not a quick fix thing, right? It's not like a miracle tea or herb or like potion or whatever, right? Totally. It's massive life change, because you have to look at your life. Like I said, if you take this position that the way I'm living is killing me, then you also realize, okay, everything in my life's on the table, and I may need to change everything to get well. And so, like, there's a huge component to this, which is the emotional and spiritual side, and specifically stress, because I alluded to this earlier, but we know what's causing cancer. Up to 90% of cancers, like, don't miss this, people, up to 90% of cancers are caused by diet, lifestyle, and environmental factors. Those are the 3 pillars, right, of cancer, prevention and or cause. Diet, we know countries that eat the most processed food, junk food, and animal food have the highest rates of cancer. Most cancers, right? Diets that eat, countries where people eat mostly plants, very simple, humble food from the earth, have very low rates of most cancers, like colon cancer, breast cancer. The second pillar is environment. There's a lot of environmental pollution out there. No, sorry, that's the third one. The second one is lifestyle. Smoking, drinking, not exercising, being overweight, right? Those are the lifestyle factors. And then the third is environment. Environmental pollution, we know, toxins in our home, external toxins. You can control what's in your home. Can't really control what's, out there in the world that could be poisonous to you, potentially cancer causing. But like, if you're working in a chemical factory, it's a bad idea, if you want to stay well, like, probably going to make you sick over time, You're working with a lot of fumes and dust and soot, smoke, right? Stuff like that. Even cosmetologists
and night shift workers.
Shift work is terrible for your circadian rhythms. But people who cut hair, they're around dyes, bleaches, like nail polish, like all these hair chemicals, right? And they have elevated rates of cancer if you work in a salon. So you have to take a look at your environment as well. So you've got to clean up your diet, got to clean up your home environment, hopefully clean up your work environment or get out of a toxic work environment. Start exercising every day. Exercise is so amazing, so underrated. It switches on cancer protective genes. It switches off cancer promoting genes. Exercise is amazing for you. And it doesn't matter what kind. As long as you're doing it 30 to 60 minutes a day, like huffing and puffing, sweating, moving your body, it's good. So, but under all that, that was a little bit of a rabbit trail for me to get to what I want to say, which is under all that, the really root cause of most chronic disease is stress. Because stress leads us to unhealthy behavior. Stress leads us to overeat. Stress leads us to self-medicate, right? With food, with cigarettes, with alcohol, with drugs, pharmaceuticals, illegal drugs, right? Stress leads us to toxic behavior. And when you have a lot of negativity in your life, when you are angry, when you hold on to negative emotions, when you're critical and judgmental, if you choose to not forgive and you hold on to bitterness and resentment, all those toxic emotions affect your physical body. So like when you're angry or afraid, so fear and worry and anxiety, all negative emotions have the same effect on your body. And what they do is they raise your stress hormones. And those hormones, like adrenaline and cortisol, promote inflammation and suppress immune function. And that's a perfect storm for cancer. Inflammation plus suppressed immunity creates an environment where cancer cells can thrive. Doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen in a week, but it's months and months, usually years, of living in a state of chronic stress. Toxic work, like relationships, toxic home relationships, dysfunctional abuse, all kinds of things, money problems. It all adds up, right? All those little stresses from different sources add up, and it's like death of a thousand cuts. And so one thing that I started to do, and I am just so adamant that cancer patients and anybody who's serious about prevention should do, is start eliminating every stressor from your life. Instead of medicating or avoiding, right? You need to face your problems head on and start solving them, right? Like, Marie Kondo's got the huge show on Netflix, huge book about tidying up, right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And how freeing, it's so freeing. I mean, it's a perfect example. Like when your home's full of crap, it's stressful. Mm-hmm. It's stressful to have disorganization and chaos in your home. And like, it's freeing to remove all of the clutter from your life, but not just your home, emotionally. Yeah. And so I made a decision. I'd like to forgive every person who had ever hurt me, right? Like, I'm just going to do this, not in a blanket statement, but like one by one, I'm going to go through, dig through my life, dig through my memories. And like every person who has ever just said an unkind thing to me or mean to me or let me down or betrayed my trust or whatever, like I'm going to forgive them by name, give them to God and just say, God, they're all yours.
So this was part of when you were healing from cancer, you made the decision to do this.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm curious, what inspired you to take that emotional action or that spiritual action?
Multiple other survivors and healers. Because I kept reading, it just kept popping up. The stress cancer connection kept popping up, unforgiveness and bitterness, negative emotions. Like these ideas are not Chris's ideas. Like they kept popping up as I was reading and learning from other people. And I'm like, like I felt like it wasn't a problem for me, but then I was like, maybe it is. And it was, right? I was in denial. I was negative. I was bitter. I was insecure. I was like arrogant and, which is like a coping mechanism, right? Arrogance and overconfidence and being judgmental and critical is, the way people cope with being insecure and unhappy. And so like, I was doing all that. And so, I just had to look in the mirror and be like, who are you? And whoever you are can change, right? But if you don't change the way you think, and change the way you act, you won't change.
Yeah.
So I had to get control of my thoughts, right? And my emotions. And again, start forgiving people like crazy, started choosing to think positively instead of negatively, catching those negative thoughts and being like, no, I don't have to be critical. I don't have to be judgmental. Like, I'm not going to be. I'm going to choose not to be, right? I'm going to choose to believe the best about people, right? I'm going to choose to believe the best about this situation. I'm going to choose to believe that God loves me, that he has plans for me, that he wants to heal me and lead me, right? And so all of that stuff, man, works synergistically in your life, right? The positive thoughts, the forgiveness, the ultra healthy diet, exercise, like it's a full dramatic life change. That's what's required to heal.
Yeah, I love it, man. There's this just do it mentality that you have that I think is so deficient in our world. I think so many people, like I brought up before, are just kind of like, they got to figure it all out before they take the action. They got to, figure out, study the right diet to eat before they start eating the diet, or whatever it is. They get stuck in this paralysis of not doing. But you have this, just take action. And I think that,
yeah, it's true. No, it's true. I'm definitely a shoot first, ask questions later kind of personality, right? Like, and I love this. There's an expression which I picked up on later, but it's what I encourage people to do, is to take inspired, imperfect action, right? Like it's not going to be perfect, but you just have to start, and you will figure things out along the way.
Yeah, it's so true. This, obviously we're talking about your cancer healing journey, but it's so pertinent in any area of life. What's really striking me in how you're sharing it, and it sounds like it's really impacted the way that you live and in all facets of your life.
Yeah, it has. These are universal principles, right? It's not just about cancer. It's about life and success and health and happiness, like all that stuff. Like we make so many excuses. We defeat ourselves. We let our emotions rule us when we don't realize that your emotions are not in control of who you are. You have control over your emotions if you choose to have control over your emotions. But the problem is we give that power to other people. We give other people the power to control our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, right? I mean, look around. Everybody's offended by everything, right?
Totally.
Everyone is offended by everything.
We're just constantly giving away our power. And
everyone's offended. It's like,
judges. Yeah.
I'm going to make a video about this soon, just a rant, but it's like, look, people are mean. They want to offend you. That's true, right? And if you let them offend you, they win. If you choose not to be offended, you win.
Yeah.
That's the deal. Like, you have a choice to react, to be angry, to be upset. You always have a choice. Yeah. But we just forget.
One of my, beliefs is, a true knowing that we're all divine beings having this human experience. And while each individual's human experience can look really stupid and sound really stupid, sometimes it's important to look past that and just see that this person is like the same as me, just doing their best. And maybe they're having a bad day. I don't know what's going on with them, but just seeing the divine essence in each individual human that is totally stupid, like, politics, whatever, you name it, they're all divine creatures. And
that goes back to choosing to believe the best about people.
Yeah.
Like, even when they act like an ass, it's like, you just never know what somebody's been through, what they're going through, why they're lashing out, why they're reacting, why they're a jerk. You just don't know. You don't know. Mm-hmm. And so, and believe me, I'm criticized all the time. Like, trolls on the internet, are after me.
You must be doing something right. Yeah.
Yeah. They're after me constantly. And, and years ago, I've been blogging for 8 years. I started in 2010 when I was 6.5 years cancer-free. I started the Chris Beat Cancer blog. And yeah, I mean, pretty shortly after that, people started criticizing me and attacking me and stuff. And it was like, ouch, like, oh, like, you know, I mean, it hurt. And then I just realized, you know what? I have a choice. I don't have to be upset by this. I don't have to react to it. I don't have to defend myself. Like I am totally in control of who I am and my thoughts and emotions. And not just that, but I take it a step forward and I forgive them. You know, I just say,
Totally.
God, I forgive this person for being mean to me on the internet. Like, I forgive them, and I'm asking you to bless them. Because, dude, like Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's what he said. That's good advice, right? Like, no matter what anybody thinks about Jesus, that is some great advice right there. Okay.
Wise
love
words.
Your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And so I'm like, okay, I will do that. And what happens is when you do that, you don't hold on to bitterness or resentment, right? Your attitude, your heart, and the way you see those people changes. Like, you don't see them as enemies, right? You just see them as other people. Like you said, like, these are other people just like me. They got problems. They're lashing out at me. I don't know why. I may never know why. I forgive them. God, I just pray that you bless them.
Yeah. And when you let go of that mental, emotional stress, the body lets go of it as well. The immune system activates. We allow our blood to circulate. There's life. I think that we're all obviously, I love where this conversation has gone, because we're all obviously living unhealthy lifestyle. Not all of us, but just societally, this chronically unhealthy lifestyle, diet and fast food and lack of exercise. But it's just as bad in our chronic tendency to hold on to grudges and constrict our, emotional selves and not express ourselves and not connect with people. It's just as chronic of an issue that needs to be addressed. Because I had this question that I was going to answer you that we've been talking about the last 10 minutes, which is, what do you think separates the healthy people who heal from cancer versus the healthy people who maybe don't heal? And this is what I believe kind of separates. But do you have any other thoughts around what separates a healthy person, or maybe a healthy person who gets cancer versus a healthy person who doesn't get cancer?
I do. I have lots of thoughts and ideas around that. First of all, if they got cancer, they weren't healthy, right? There was a perception they were healthy, but they weren't healthy, right? Because a healthy body, a healthy immune system does not allow cancer to thrive. Okay. So they might've been fit. They might've looked good. They might've had some tight abs, but externally, but internally there's a problem, and they were not well. But the thing is, stress can undermine everything else you do. So you can actually do all the healthy stuff right, but if you don't address the stress in your life, if you don't forgive people who've hurt you, that can be the one barrier to health and healing that keeps you sick and prevents you from getting well and ultimately leads to death. That's how potent and powerful stress is. I mean, look, we all know cases of people that were like, oh, so-and-so drank and smoked his whole life and he lived to be 98, right?
Yeah.
And I tell you, you show me a guy who lives to be 98, drinking and smoking and eating tons of meat and dairy and whatever, right? And I'll show you a guy who probably is a happy person, right?
Totally.
Who's very low stress and is a happy person. And they just have not carried baggage with them, and they have not held grudges, and they have just, kind of floated through life. And so, does that mean you should not quit smoking and drinking and eating a bunch of unhealthy stuff? No, it's all about risk management. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather not take a bunch of unnecessary risks. I'm only 42, man. Like, I've got a lot of life left. And I could get cancer in 10 years or 20 years, 30 years. Like, I could get cancer in any kind, right? And so, like, the way I live now is not quite as hardcore as it was when I was healing, but it's still pretty hardcore. I mean, way more hardcore than the average person. Plant-based diet, almost all organic, right? exercising every day. Like I'm
Right.
very,
Yeah. It looks hardcore from the outside, but the sense that I get is that you are loving it and enjoying
right.
it. It's not like you're feeling restricted while you're living a hardcore healthy life.
No,
But
it's
it's
totally normal for me.
yeah, it's hardcore when you juxtapose it next to standard American McDonald's drive-through line, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. People can't imagine like not eating meat every day. It's like, I don't know. It's like, it's not a big deal.
Living proof. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a big deal. Like I'm the healthiest
Yeah.
and strongest and fittest I've ever been in my life at 42, you know, and people ask all the time, where do you get your protein? Like, you don't need it. Like, you don't have to worry about protein. All fruits and vegetables contain amino acids. Your body uses those to build proteins. Like, you don't ever have to think or worry about where to get protein. We've been so like brainwashed by the meat industry and the supplement industry to always be thinking about protein.
Right. It sounds big letters on the protein bar.
Yeah.
Like how many numbers
how many grams of protein are in this snack, you know? And it's like, it does not matter. Like, in fact, high protein is terrible, right? It's actually bad for you.
Stressful. It creates acid in the body. Yeah.
It's acidic, hard on the kidneys, like promotes cancer growth. Like a high protein diet is like the problem. It's one of the problems with the American diet. We're eating too much meat. You know, the average American eats 222 pounds of meat a year.
Yeah.
200. They just published these new stats, and meat consumption is the highest it's ever been in history.
That's too bad. I was under the impression that it's kind of like plateauing, if not going the other way. But
I was too.
But
there's,
we still have our work to do. We still have our work to do.
Plant-based movement. Yeah, I mean, like the plant-based movement, veganism, like all that kind of stuff is definitely growing. Vegetarian, it's growing, but in proportion, the rest of the population is now eating more meat than ever. Like it's insane. Like the average American eats 18 pounds of bacon a year. Like it's crazy. Like your ancestors didn't eat that way. Right? Cavemen didn't even eat that way. No one has eaten as much meat as Americans do right now. It's like,
wow, I didn't know that.
I know, man. It kind of boggles the mind. But anyway, we're rabbit trailing hard here, and
it's all good. It's all good. You know, I really, the whole talk, the whole story has been super inspiring, and I'm wondering if there's any kind of last nuggets of inspiration for anyone on a healing journey, healing path.
Well, I hope they'll get my book. You know, I hope they will, because I make $1 every time I sell a book. So there you go.
Cha-ching.
Big money. But no, seriously, I hope they'll get my book because, you know, not only do I tell the cancer story in more detail than I could here, but also I go into all the science, all the nutritional science and there's several chapters devoted to the problems in the cancer industry. And it's like, your eyes will pop out of your head when you see like what's happened behind the scenes, like all the research and published information about the perils and pitfalls of the current cancer treatment model. But then the other section of the book is the prescriptive section, where I just talk about, here's amazing nutritional science on why fruits and vegetables are so potent against cancer. Like, here's what they do in the body. So it's like, it's great. So I hope people read the book, but beyond that, like the concept that I think I try to help people understand the most is that health is simple, right? Truth is simple. Health is simple. Lies are complicated, and we've been lied to and marketed to and manipulated by tons of giant corporations, right? For our whole lives. And we're all confused. But the really simple truth is that eating a diet that's mostly plants, right? Mostly fruits and vegetables, nuts, beans, seeds, whole grains, like food from the earth, organic is best, and with the least amount of processing, right? Exercising, moving your body every day, getting fresh air and sunshine every day is so powerful. And being mindful of toxic stuff around you in your home or workplace, and then looking at your emotional life and making a to-do list of stresses to remove from your life and people to forgive, right? Things to let go. Like it's simple stuff. I'm not saying it's easy. I get that, right? but these are very simple things. And most of the most beneficial things you can do for your health cost you nothing. They literally cost. Forgiveness is free, right? Fasting is free. Eating plant food instead of animal food, there's virtually no difference in cost. Exercise is free. Sunshine is free. Fresh air is free. So it's not about selling a bunch of supplements or whatever. It's just about trying to point people in the right direction and inspire them and encourage them and show them cancer can be healed. It can be prevented. It doesn't have to be a death sentence. And your choices matter.
Amen. And on top of that, I'll just add, because what I also hear you saying is just do it. Just take some action. Yeah. Just start somewhere. It doesn't matter where, take action, start making changes. All the small changes you make add up to a big result, right? Small changes add up to a big result. And so as many small changes, as positive changes that you can make in your life, the more the better. That's what I'm getting at, right? They all help in little ways. And pretty soon you'll look back and realize, like me, you look back and realize how different your life is because you made all these small changes, and how much better it is because you made all these small changes. So just do it. Just do it. Chris, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And be sure to grab the book.
Boom. There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Chris,
hold it up, showing it off right there.
Beautiful.
You want it just for the cover, right?
I do. It's a piece of art. Look at that thing. When you're done, put it on the wall.
I'm encouraging you to judge this book by its cover because the cover is so great.
It is great. Well, thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure. And thanks for being on the podcast. Peace and love.
Thanks, man. See ya.